was interesting. This morning I was having a experience of not being very clear, and I kind of just soldiered through it in a way. I just ignored that I wasn't in the center because I had things to do. And I was trying to stay aware of it and kind of work my way back to something more coherent. Then I just felt kind of tamasic, I guess. But I had to handle animals actually, and there was this kind of moment of needing to have a peaceful vibration, so that it didn't. So that it didn't come back to bite me, basically.
We should do that with people too.
Yeah,
not just
but
animals,
it was interesting to be able to encounter that clarity out of necessity through interacting with nature, but not being able to get to it just through the recognition of seeing that I wasn't clear. So, is that what's going on?
Well, the ego is based on the need to get the reciprocity of the other, let's say, right? It needs to have rapport originally with the mother and the father and the system, and right? And so the need to have the approval of the other, which now is the animal, you have to get his approval or its approval, whatever, in order to calm down and produce what you want from it, right? So there's that need to be loving, even though it's in your own self-interest. But it's always in your self-interest to be centered and to be in that state of open-heartedness. But what needs to happen in order for you to do that while the body and mind are active in the world is to realize that you're not it. You have to be totally detached from the character, not care that he's not centered, but realizing the truth from that place that's always centered, and then that will be reflected in the character and in the animal that will produce that unity of rapport and resonance that will bring about the desired effect. But it comes from that place, not from the ego wanting it or not feeling able to get it.
Right. I can relate to that, being indifferent to being centered and peaceful, or this seemingly not being able to kind of return to the center. Having a narrative about either of them is kind of the polarities.
Yeah, you create more agitation by caring, and then anxiety, and why can't I do it, and then you're really digging a hole. So there has to be a complete letting go of the I thought, and then there's freedom.
Okay. I had another question as well, actually, in the Jnana video last night. Amri mentioned the kumbhaka and the anxiety, actually, at the instruction in the guided meditation of just like following the breath. But I have a recollection of you teaching many years ago that initial anxiety is actually the first breath that the infant is taking. I'm just curious about the anxiety that comes in relationship to the breath. Is it got something to do with the first breath that we take?
You know, I'm not sure I can answer it like that, but it's quite possible that first breath is a moment between life and death for the consciousness. Because if that breath doesn't work, and it's never tried it before, right? It wasn't breathing before. It was in a liquid. It was more like a fish, right? And now it's on dry land, right? And this new equipment has never been used, right? Can I drive this vehicle I just bought? You know. So I think that it's a moment in which one is neither alive or dead, and that's going to be decided by the breath. And so one is in that state. But before one has really invested fully in whether one really cares if it's alive or dead.
So it's not necessarily anxiety in the way that that's perceived. It's just something new.
But later it is perceived as anxiety. And if there was already anxiety in the womb, then it will come with anxiety. Because there's fear that one isn't wanted to be alive, right? Or it's not going to be a good life to be alive in, right? So if that has already occurred, then yes, there is there's going to be anxiety. But even if there isn't at that moment, the mind thinking back on it and gaining anxiety later will attach it to that. Yeah. And here's the real thing: the ego forms as a defense against that anxiety, which requires a contraction. And when you're in the kumbhaka, letting go, you're decontracting, and that suddenly makes you vulnerable again. And I can't let go, then I'll have to face death again and that terror. And so the more one relaxes and goes into peace, the more it can actually create dread and anxiety and fear that one then has to close down, because one can't afford to stay even relaxed, because one is in a fight or flight mode, right?
I took the advice offered to take stock of unnecessary expenses and simplify my life in that way. I just wonder how to shake the sense of being caught in the matrix, as I feel enmeshed in it with having the constant daily consideration of money to deal with.
Well, again, it's what I was talking about and what this Tantra was referring to. You have to realize who you are. You're not the character that is having that question. That question is coming from the ego level of mind. But the ego level of mind is not real. It's not who you are. When you are completely without care about whether the ego feels like it's caught in the matrix or not, because it is the matrix. That's all the ego could be. The character is nothing other than the unfoldment of the vibrational agitations of the field that produce the illusion of persons. But it's all just one luminous consciousness. And so the more you are in that state of the one luminous consciousness, and the less you care about that individual agitation that is an ego with all kinds of doubts and questions and preparations, etc., the more simple the mind becomes, not just the life of the character, but the consciousness that will then be able to embody that luminous presence that is eternal and cares not about what happens to its vehicle, because it already realizes it's the formless absolute field of presence that cannot be touched by any sense of otherness, any sense of mortality, any sense of duality of life or death or pain or pleasure or good or evil. It's already beyond all the qualia of the consciousness of the individual character.
Question from Lakshmi. Can you please speak a bit more about pure meaning free of all emotions?
Emotions, which we could call ego motions, the emotions of the ego are based upon the bodily identification formed in childhood with all of the sentimentality of its reactions to the world that are based upon that initial paradigm of what reality is within the family system. And therefore, whatever values were given by that consciousness of the parents, really, that were transferred into the individual consciousness as its initializing sanskaras, are based on the emotional valuing of particular aspects and phenomena of the environment and of personal relationships and of the meaning of life and of the value system that can produce pleasure or pain, happiness or sadness, joy or depression or any of the possible emotional reactions. But once one's consciousness is governed by that, then one has no control over the reactivity that comes with the kind of, let's say, a phenomenon unfolding that initial system of sanskaras would consider to be unpleasant, unhappy, something that is frustrating or that would create anger in that original system, or hopelessness and despair, whatever it might be. None of that is real. And so to fall into the eruption of those emotions mean that one's consciousness has become lost in this initial system of sanskaras. That must be burned in the tapas, the meditation, in which then all identity and its emotional reactions that are tied to its identity in relation to others and the environment have been completely dissolved, so that everything is perceived as if it's the first moment of time, without a past, without a future, and there is only pure wonderment and fascination, without any emotion except the joy and the bliss of consciousness itself. I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Question from Catherine. Could you talk about the significance of Earth's weakening magnetic field allowing plasma and solar wind into our atmosphere? Besides causing power outages on the phenomenal plane, what significance is it having on the morphogenic field?
Well, it's a part of, a symptom of, a part of the Theo-Drama that is cosmic in scope. It's not simply about this planet. And so all of the conditions that make life possible and stable in a world that is seismically stable and atmospherically stable and healthy for the life forms that need to breathe that atmosphere, et cetera, and the climate and the rainfall, et cetera. All of those elements are now being destabilized in the same way that the minds of the inhabitants of not just the planet, but of the cosmos are being destabilized and becoming ever more chaotic and conflictive and destructive. And so this is all simply a part of the phenomenal grand finale of this play that enables us to recognize that nature is participating. It's not just about a provincial planet that is going through some political problems among one of its species, let's say, at the top of the food chain. No, it's about the cosmic reality. And at every level, including that of fundamental physics, there's an instability and finally a realization by the physicists that time and space are illusory and that nothing really exists except these waves of information. And so our whole picture of the world and our understanding even of what is thought in relation to our picture of the world is dissolving. And so consciousness is becoming groundless and lost and in a state of vertigo. But that vertigo is just a symptom in which there is no up and down anymore. There is no difference of samsara and nirvana. There's nothing to hold on to because we held on to duality. That's how we understood meaning, because it's not hot and it's not cold, it's just right. We look for the golden mean between the binaries in order to guide our life, and now there isn't one. And that total chaos in which there's nothing to hold on to, nothing, and no one, and everything is falling apart, and everyone is. And so this is both a terrifying consciousness and creating a kind of dizziness and insanity, but it's also bringing total freedom and the release of that chaos into divine order. And so those who recognize the ultimate nature of the unfoldment and what is being revealed in this decomposition of the world as we once took it for granted is bringing about the revelation of the presence of God as the one agency who is dreaming all of this, and that it's all a blessing and it's all perfect and there's nothing to fear. And all there is to do is to surrender to the bliss of that ultimate goodness.
I appreciate the answer to Lakshmi. I was going to ask you, I feel it's been said, the importance of being able to feel. And could you explain a little bit what that means, the capacity to feel, and maybe that's a different question to what are feelings versus emotions, but I'm curious if you could elaborate a little bit.
No, it's a very good question and a very profound one. In order to feel, one has to be completely open. One has to be willing to endure the intensity of the energy of the field. And those in the Buddhist tradition who can actually feel are called bodhisattvas. And the feeling that they have is compassion, because they can feel the suffering at the same time that they know it's an illusion. And they are not suffering, but they feel that suffering. And they want to bring love and healing to that illusory suffering so that it can be released, and all the nodes of consciousness can enjoy the same bliss of that perfection that is your true nature right now. Why are you suffering, right? And so that capacity to feel is what actually dissolves emotions, because the suffering is the emotional reactions of those who are ignorant of what we really are. And so the power of the truth expressed as energy in the frequency of God consciousness that creates a vibrational reaction that dissolves the emotional, let's say, prison that the ego is in, and frees the other to fly into the infinite light and be absorbed in it, is the action of the yogi that enables graduation from the matrix, because that's what settles all one's karmic accounts from the past, is giving that unconditional love to the entire creation, including everyone in it, because in some lifetime, everyone was either a child or a parent or an uncle or an enemy that you killed and that killed you and that you gave birth to in another life, and et cetera, et cetera. And all of those entanglements of all the characters that you've ever played that are connected with all the characters in the universe that you have affected and been affected by, all of the karma of the holding of grudges and of the positive projections and all of it, you let go of all in the recognition of the absolute unity of consciousness.
That's beautiful, thank you. And what I was thinking about when you said it's openness is sometimes in this process of learning how to feel and not defend and not close, but staying open, insight, understanding doesn't necessarily always arise. Sometimes it's just being able to stay open as maybe a first step. I guess that's kind of a question, is in that development of that capacity, is it first just being able to stay open without necessarily understanding?
This is also a very good question. Until one is at the fourth assemblage point, love will not overcome fear. You can't stay open if you're afraid of being hurt, right? or if you're afraid someone's going to take something from you, right? Or you take your territory, or whatever it is, that is the reason for staying closed in that situation. But it's always a fear. And if you reach that point where you're in a state of love without fear, there will never be any reason not to be fully open, because you can't be hurt.
Thank you. Can I ask one more question?
Mm-hmm.
I find this discussion about the mind, voice, and body, and the energy, frequency, and vibration really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get too technical about it, but it seems to me that the energy is always 0 point energy. The energy is always pure, or maybe I've misunderstood that. It's the frequency that then is the frame in a way.
That's right, correct.
Is that is the frequency at the level of sanskara, or are those the narratives that have
the sanskaras,
the sanskaras?
which are the qualia, and if they get fixed at a certain vibrational frequency and become a standing vibrational wave, then they are going to produce that kind of a reaction of closeness or openness, right? Of love or of fear. But it's all determined by the sanskaras. So in the moment, you won't have a choice. You may say, oh, I wish I could open to this person, but you can't. You know, you might regret it later and be angry at yourself. Why didn't I open up, and have a different kind of a heart-to-heart talk instead of whatever? So the situation can't be resolved at the level in which you feel it, but at the level in which you witness it, then you're able to bring that power of total presence that will convert the fear into love. But what you are is beyond both love and fear. It has no qualities. It's inconceivable. But it's from that place that the value of love, which brings about harmony and oneness and beauty and goodness, etc., is preferable and is the accurate and the fundamental nature of the self. So it doesn't have to make a choice, but that's what is emitted, and that dissolves emotions.
Thank you.
And she has a question about money. She says, how can I clear the sanskara to money? All the while it still feels that this reality depends on it. Fears of never having enough, losing the job, unable to attain one that pays sufficiently to live in the world, so much oscillation. One moment I'm giving away, the next clutching to it tightly.
Okay, I get it, Anuraga. Here's the problem. It's the narrative itself that is causing your suffering. It's not money. It's this very logic that you're using, and this very stream of emotional reactivity. You need to be completely detached from the character and its financial situation or anything else about it. And when you are in a complete state of who cares about what's going to happen to that character in the Matrix, that's not who I am. I am unborn. I don't even exist in a world. I am nothingness, completely empty of thought and identity. But I am also the fullness of pure presence that will be able to then manifest through this character as love, which will change its destiny and its karma and bring about magically a very different kind of situation that it could never bring about through worrying and through its ego narrative. And so the solution is rising above the identification, not trying to change the circumstances of the situation. I hope that helps.
Thank you. I was just very fascinated by the conversation you're having with Swati. I found it very helpful, and I felt like I very related. And it's always emotion, I think, that is what I get caught up in any moment, right? Rather than feeling, being fully present.
Yes.
And then you were talking about being present, and what I always feel from you is compassion. What is it to fully feel compassion? And then, so is that what has to be felt to be fully
Well, you just
present?
said you felt it from me. So you know what it is.
But yeah, but then you're talking about the point, being aware, like there's a feeling of not opening to someone, not opening up in a moment, right? And there's more and more awareness of it. But is it always an after the fact, or if it's in the moment, and in the moment, what's the willpower to act upon it? And is it just forgiving oneself in that moment for being committed to the character or the emotion?
It's
The
none
forgiveness
of
of oneself.
It's the recognition that whatever the character is doing and saying is perfect. Okay? That's the real compassion, that you accept the character just as she is. And when you accept the character just as she is, you will find that you are embodying that state of presence that will emanate love and compassion naturally, because there is no longer any defensiveness. There's no longer any fear. There's no longer any anger about an illusory past. That pure presence brings freedom from emotions that cause constriction and shutting down of the intelligence, etc., and allows the natural feeling of wisdom and the compassionate knowledge of the heart that understands everything to fully emerge spontaneously and naturally and completely transform your character forever.